Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have both George and his wife, Tondra Gregory, with me. They are the authors of the Marriage Game Plan, and something I think you're going to take away from our conversation today is how preparation is very important, and oftentimes we don't prepare for our marriage. So thanks so much for being on today, guys.
Thank you for having
Excited to be
us.
here, Phil, always with you.
Hey, well, I'm honored. I'm honored. So to start the journey here, talk a little about, the marriage game plan. How do people do that? When I hear game plan, I think of sports, and obviously, George, in your line of work, that's a very natural connection here. But I know that sometimes part of a game plan is preparing for the good and the not so good. So talk a little bit about that for marriages.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate part is the happily ever after wears off pretty quick in most of our marriages, right?
Yeah.
And so just like sports teams that plan and they go in with a strategy of, hey, we want to win, here's how we're going to win, we have our goals, things of that nature is we define those things in our book called the Marriage Game Plan to help couples to set up
Mhm.
themselves for success, right? And so we know that defining a win is very important because there's sometimes that when that happily ever after wears off, man, couples don't know what direction they're going in because, the husband might be wanting to go in this direction, the wife might want to go in this direction. And so we say defining the win is very, very important, right? Or at least getting that game plan of what do you want your marriage to look like? When it's all said and done, 50 or 60 years later, what do you want people to say about your marriage, right? Not just, oh my God, look at that couple, but man, this couple reflected God's image, or this couple helped us to see that we can make it in our marriage, or they left a legacy that their kids would want to have. And so I feel like all those things are very important with a game plan.
Mhm.
I love that. Tondra, what would you add to that?
I would just add the fact that a lot of times couples are blindsided because they think happily ever after is the end goal.
Yeah.
It's one thing to get married, but it's a whole nother thing to be married and to stay married. So you have to have a game plan. You don't want to be blindsided, but you want to understand what marriage is intended to do in your relationship. And it's not just to make you happy. There's a lot of other things
Mhm.
that marriage is supposed to bring out
That's
of
good.
you and help you change you and grow you and make you more well-rounded. There's so many things that couples don't know. A lot of couples might not know, and I don't want couples to be blindsided. I want you to have a game plan when that happens.
I love that. And one thing that I think about when I hear that is, sports team coming into the year, every team's goal is to go undefeated and win a championship, right? I mean, let's be honest, no one would be like, yeah, hey, we want to lose some games this year. We just want to go undefeated. We want to win the championship. But oftentimes what you hear happening is a team, gets certain amount of games in and they're undefeated and they start looking a little sloppy, and all of a sudden people are like, you know what? It'd actually be good if we lost, right? Like that, it'll recalibrate us. And I think in sports, we can say that because we go, oh, well, it's just one of 17 games. Like, that's
Mhm.
okay. They'll get back on track. But in a marriage, sometimes you have a loss and it's like, oh no, this is the beginning of an unraveling instead of a catalyst for growth. So, talk a little bit about that, how you can, even when things don't go as planned, it can actually be a catalyst for something better.
Yeah, well, we know like if you think about sports, right? Like you just said, is that the season is long, whether it's basketball or soccer, whatever it is, just because you lose in one quarter of the season or in one part of the season doesn't mean you lost the entire season, right? And so we just like to keep couples knowing that there's a long game here, right? And
Yeah.
because you mess up, sometimes when you learn from mistakes, when you learn from things that you can grow by, when you learn from a bad argument, that's not a bad argument. It's a bad argument if you don't learn from it. But when you learn what not to say, how to, or what tone that your spouse doesn't want you to say it in, that really helps you, right? And so I think that in marriages, sometimes we look and we say we always want to win, and we do. But sometimes in your trying season, when you're not on the same page or when you're not in sync, to ask each other those important questions. Why are we not in sync? How do we get out of sync? How do we get resynced? I think that just helps to grow the couple in communication, in trust, and in intimacy.
Yeah, and a lot of times the growth mindset is so important in your marriage because if you have a fixed mindset and you think this is just how I am and I'm not supposed to change and you just have to accept me as I am, I said that my own, I was like, don't try to change me. That's what I
Yeah,
told
you said it a
George.
couple times too.
I was like, you knew how I was when you married me, and don't try to change me. But a lot of couples don't understand that change is a part of growth. If you are not changing, you're not evolving as a person. George and I got married really young, like we were 23 years old. And I'm not going to tell you how old we are now, but I'm just saying, thank goodness that we are not the same people we were
Hmm.
at 23 that we are at our present ripe age now.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that kind of leads to, a second element of the game plan. You guys recommend having a vision statement. So, how do you have a vision statement knowing that individually or our family dynamic is going to be changing? So, talk about one, crafting a vision statement, but then maybe two, how to revisit it or how to write it in such a way that it can evolve with you.
Mm.
Yeah, well, we don't think your vision statement should change, right? So, although you'll have different seasons and there might be ups or downs, but the vision is here's what we want to do. So, for instance, is we in our marriage, we don't talk about divorce, right? So, we want to win in our marriage because we want to stay together,
Mhm.
Yep.
right? We want to not just stay together, but we want to build a legacy for our kids to say, we want to be married, right? And so our kids, my daughter, she came to me a few years ago and she said this. She said, I want a marriage like your marriage to mom
Mm.
because you guys have taught us and you guys, it's fun to be around you guys. And so now we're not talking about, hey, we're never going to have an argument. That's not in our vision statement, right? But we
Yeah.
do want to have covenant communication in our marriage. That's a vision.
Mhm.
And what does that mean? It's not enough to just say I do. You got to still say I do decades later. And so you do that through honoring the same way you give those vows of I'm going to do all these promises that we get up there and say. And then years later, we're tested by those. We still go back to that and say, I want a marriage that still honors you. Even when we disagree, I still want to put you as the priority. I don't want to talk down to you. I don't want to minimize you. I want to listen to you so that we can get better.
Yeah. And a vision statement, it serves like that compass, right? So it helps guide your responses to each other. It kept your decisions to each other. So everything that you're doing, you're working towards that vision statement. And for a couple to be on the same page
Yeah.
about the vision that they want their end game picture to look like,
Yeah.
then it is kind of like you're not just haphazardly doing marriage in the dark and hoping and a wish and a prayer that people say that we make it, but you are actively making it because you kind of are, you've decided what it is, and you're making those decisions and actions that lead you there.
Yeah, and I'd like to add this part. I feel like for us, a vision statement has kept us when we have asked that question, right? And this is a question that is probably going to shock some of your audience that the authors of the marriage game plan to say we have conversations like this, but there's times when you ask yourself, why did we get married?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like that's a movie, by the way.
Yeah.
But we ask ourselves, why do we get married? And your vision statement gives you that why. It gives you something to go back to that when you're about to walk out that door, or when you say, man, this is the last straw, that you realize, oh, we've got something, a long-term vision together. And that's what we want. We want something that locks us in, that ties us in, and that gives us hope even during tough times.
Mhm.
I love that. Now, while you were sharing that, you said a comment, and that is sometimes we're not on the same page. I think that probably happens quite a bit of times. So talk about what in your guys's maybe research or just time in different marriages has caused people to get off page, but then also how you can get back on page maybe quicker than just letting it take its own course.
Yes, for sure. Some things that cause couples to not feel like they're on the same page. I say the differences that you have a lot
Mhm.
of times, and no one's wrong. Like God created each of us unique and different, and we're each significant in our own way. We have our different purposes that God has put in us, and so it's not that you are to lose that part. It's more of how do we, as two uniquely defined individuals, come together and figure out how we work as a well-oiled machine, right? It's that is the mystery of marriage. Like, how do two people now come together and operate with this oneness that the Bible talks about being
Yeah.
one, right? And so, in a game plan, that's why we have this game plan and we wrote a game plan because we want to help couples know how do we fit together and how do we bring out the best in each other so that we can fulfill that bigger God-given purpose of what he created marriage to do. And so that's why we wrote that game plan to help couples figure out how we're different because the differences is the things that make us feel those are
That's
the
key.
things that kind of like push us away from each other. And so how can we allow those to bring us together as one? So
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I think of a few differences, right?
mhm.
Like differences in communication style,
Yes.
right? Communication is one of the things that causes a lot of people to split. And you're so different. We're so different in our communication styles. Some might be like Tondra. She was more like a processor, but I was like, oh, we need to talk about this in the moment. And
Yeah.
we have to, if we're on the same team, right? We got to understand that sometimes our differences is what gets on our nerves about each other, right? And some people say opposites attract, and you're like, well, not when it hurts like this. And so when it comes down to how Tondra was processing, she needed a break. She needed a timeout, but she didn't know how to articulate, I needed a break or a timeout. She just shut down. And I felt
Mhm.
like I was in isolation or the doghouse, and nobody wants to be in a doghouse.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to say to her during many of our times when we felt like we're not on the same team, hey, I want to talk about this so I can go ahead and get this right. And she was like, I just need to be in my emotions or feelings and process this, and then I'll come back to you. But a lot of people don't understand that when you go through those moments and you ask each other the questions to get to know each other better, you actually should be building your team while your differences are almost pulling you apart, but you can learn from that and you can grow together. That's the part of being on the same team is you can grow together during tough times or during the winning seasons of your marriage.
Mhm.
I love that. Now, as you guys are saying that, something it makes me think of is, you meet somebody and they've already had life happen before you ever met them. And it's like picking up a book and saying, all right, I'm going to start in page 142. And it's like, well, the odds of you being able to figure out how you got here is about 0%, right? You can make some deductive reasoning on certain broad topics, but it's like, you don't know the first 141 pages. So how are you going to understand page 142 to 250? So,
Mhm.
as you guys are talking about, getting on the same page, how important is it, I guess, kind of these two different elements? One, to understand the person's past, their experiences, the family dynamics they grew up in, the relationships they've seen. But then two, being able to, encourage a partner to do self work, right? Because if they're trying to grow and become the best version of themselves, that's also going to help the relationship dynamic. But I think you can't force that on someone, right? You can encourage or you can do it with them, but there needs to be some self work. So talk about those two elements.
Mhm. Yeah. Did you want to? Oh, well, definitely. That's one of the attributes of letting someone know that they're ready for a serious
Mm.
relationship and a marriage is the willingness to understand themselves and have dealt with whatever those things that they need to deal with, right? And
Yeah.
healed or whatever that baggage is. Like we all come into marriage with baggage, but understanding that baggage so that you can communicate how this baggage has impacted you and how you can get a strategy around how you want to make sure that this baggage doesn't it's not detrimental to your
Yeah.
relationship, but it can be helpful to know and how to guard against anything that might come up and helping your partner understand those things, then that way you become a team
Yep.
around the baggage. And for me, if you don't know, then you don't know what you're fighting against in your relationship. And you got a better chance of overcoming baggage if you can understand it and not just fight it in the dark, but bring it to the light, lay it out, and get a strategy around it is really the best way to deal with the baggage.
Yeah, we always say this is that you marry more than what's in front of you, right? So our eyes tell us, "Oh, she's pretty, she's fine," but we don't know when you said that comment, oh, she's going back to maybe a moment where she felt abandoned or maybe she
Mm.
felt like somebody was getting ready to make her upset, and so there's the defensive mechanism. And so understanding that we're married to more than than what's in front of us is to ask those deeper questions, right? And so for some of your listeners, they probably went through premarital counseling, and for others, they just rolled a dice and they didn't get it, or maybe they're preparing for marriage and they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out, do we really need this? We say yes, that's a part of your marriage game plan. You see, our Chargers, those guys are we're in preseason now, so there is a season, but they are in camp. They are vetting each other. They're on the field. They're running through the playbook. They're asking each other, do you understand these plays? And so I think as a married couple or as a couple that's potentially getting married, we need to go through some premarital counseling because what that does is it gets you to talking about your past. And just to be real with us is that we didn't do enough for that when we first started off.
Mm.
And so we didn't write this book, Phil, because we're experts in the field, although meaning like we know everything. We wrote it because we had a lot of mess ups and we just learned to adjust over time. And we are celebrating 30 years this year. 30
Right.
years. Can you believe it's
I
30
know,
years?
right?
Like, I mean, when we first started off, marriage was so tough because I didn't understand that our backgrounds were so different and how it impacted. And so we again, I think any couple who's out there, your past definitely comes into your current, regardless if you understand that or not. And when you deal with that, both as a couple and as an individual, you're going to show up as your best self for every game that you're going to win together.
I love it. Now, you use the word together, and I like that. And the tough part about coming together is, as you guys have mentioned, sometimes we're very different, right? I mean, there's just biological differences between male and female and the way we're wired and how we think, right? There's reasons that people talk it like blue microphones and pink microphones, right? Sometimes it just sounds different, even though we're saying the same thing. But what you guys have kind of boiled it down to is, hey, there's four main reasons that God, has introduced marriage and it thinks it's important for us. So maybe talk about that. But then number two, anyone that's listening that maybe just doesn't have a strong, faith life or relationship with God, maybe what's a step that they could think about or, start kind of, introducing that or viewing their marriage in a godly way.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, one of those principles that we talk about in chapter 2 of the book is that marriage, when God first made marriage, what one of those things was so that we could reflect who He was, right? So marriage is not just about us, but our Creator, who He made us to be. We are made in God's image. That's what the Bible tells us, right? And that just blows my mind when I think about we're made in his image. Does that means we can act like him, look like him, respond like him? And so when we think about all of his great characteristics, but also compare that to our earthly parents, right? Like Tondra, if you saw a picture of her mother, you would say, wow, you look just like your mom. But if you talk to them, you'll realize, wow, she responds kind of like her mom. And the thing is that the family through God's eyes is his vehicle for making sure his image goes to the world. And so how I love Tondra in our home or to the community around us really says here's how you view God. And so if I'm honoring her with my language, if I'm forgiving her, if I'm giving her the high fives and complimenting her, then all of a sudden we realize that, man, this is a bigger purpose here. It's not just me and what we do, but we give people of image or a snapshot of who God is.
And if a person doesn't really understand that biblical view, how they can begin to understand that is really reading, the scriptures and what does God say about marriage and what does God say about how I can live my best life, because it, like anything, you have to go back to the creator if you really want to optimize why it was created.
Mm.
And you know God is our creator. He had a plan for us. He has a plan for marriage. And if we're going to get the most out of that plan, we have to know what his intentions were, and we have to seek him for that guidance of how to live your best life. He has that in the Bible. So starting to understand that is a big part of preparing you down the road for a biblical marriage, if that's your goal.
Yeah, and to just make that even more practical, 'cause to go to your second part of it,
Yeah.
is your question is maybe somebody is cycling through patterns of, you know, hateful language to your spouse, or maybe you're in this impasse and it just seems like you're not on the same team and you're opponents or you're enemies. And yet through God's word for us, we know that loving communication comes from your relationship with God. And so as I spend more time with God, then I start reflecting his nature, his character to Tondra. And so sometimes we think faith is sort of outside of our marriage. It's like two separate things. And yet no, it's combined. And so we like to sit and ask those questions of God. Hey, can you help us
Mm.
to be better communicators? Can you help me to be more loving? Can you help me to hear her heart instead of responding to every word that she's saying? Because that's what sometimes I do is I want to respond. What did you say? I got to get no, but I need to understand her heart. Her heart is she wants me to trust her or understand that she's a little bit delicate in this season. And so I've got to say, Lord, help me to do things that I cannot. And so maybe you're on your journey and you say, man, I'm trying to do this without God. Maybe it's a good time to just say, let me invite God in because he created marriage in the first place.
Mhm.
I love that. Now, you guys talk about having a season of rest and recovery in a relationship. Um, that can be hard, right? I mean, people have kids, they got jobs, they want to actively, be in a relationship with their spouse. They don't want to just wake up 3 years down the road and say, "Man, we've been, kind of we're just blindly walking through this thing." So, talk about what do you mean when you say rest and recovery, and then two, what are some practical ways that you can go about getting that inside of the family unit and the marriage itself?
Yes. Well, one thing about athletes that I've learned since we've been working with as NFL chaplains is that rest and recovery is just as important as how you play the game. Athlete, if they don't do their rest and recovery, it's going to affect when it's game time. So it's just the perspective of how
Hmm.
important rest and recovery is to your game
Yeah.
is a shift in the mindset. I feel like people, especially in our culture today, like people feel like their identities and everything is wrapped in the production that they're able to do and being extremely busy. So making a decision of saying, hey, no, like if I want to have more capacity for my family and for my relationship, then rest and recovery is a part of that game plan. I have to schedule rest and recovery if I want to have the capacity for the things that are important to me. So that practically looks like saying no to things.
Mm.
And I just did a mic drop right there. And I know
You just shook some people's eye. They're like, what did she say? Can we really say no?
Yeah.
Yes.
exactly keeping the main thing, the priorities. Your family and your marriage are the most important things. I say marriage is one of the most important institutions that you will be a part of in your life that has generational impact. So
Mm.
no other institution that you are a part of or organization or activity can trump that, right? We have to make sure we keep the priority to priority and rest and recovery. In order for us to do that, rest and recovery is a part of that strategy.
Right, and keep in mind that the lens in which we're talking about rest and recovery is so many people want to win in their career or in their hobbies, or they want to be successful outside the home, and yet we say we want you to win your home game. We don't want you to be successful with all this, so let's say you go out here and you ball out with money. Like I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? We
Yeah.
can't take that, right? But what we do leave is we leave a legacy of a family that's going to love us and take care of us or just be with us as best as they can. And so So a part of this rest and recovery is when you say no to certain things is so that you might can be there on the weekends with your family, right? Or that you might can be more present. And so saying no could mean taking this phone and instead of looking at social media around the dinner table, it could just mean I'm resting from social media so that I can ask my wife at dinner, how was your day today?
Yeah.
And really listen and focus in. You see, Phil, I'm going to tell you something I did wrong when I first got married, and that was when I asked my wife, "How are you today? How was your day?" And she would tell me at 8:01 I did this, and 8:02 I did this, and 8:03 I did this. I mean, she was very detailed, and I told her, I stopped her and I said, "Listen, when a man asks you, how was your day? He just wants to hear good or bad or it can get better." And I wasn't willing
Now,
to
that's
be
not what
focused.
you do
That no, that's not
when you
what
get
you do.
married. These are the little things that we share in the book about all the mistakes. But so I just want all the listeners out there to know we're not approving that
No,
message.
we're and I messed up when I did that. But what I'm saying is that was my moment to rest my brain. Don't think about what was on social media. Don't think about my next meeting, but really be present in the moment with her, right? And rest could be taking a vacation, right? I knew my dad was a workaholic and he loved us, but man, he always wanted to work. And so taking a vacation or taking a vision weekend with just you and your spouse to say, man, we want to get away from our kids. There are babysitters that can actually watch your kids over the weekend. So, parents, don't use your kids as an excuse.
Oh,
Get somebody to watch your kids, go away. Maybe it's a romantic vacation with you and your spouse, or maybe it's just we know we need to talk through some issues away from the house and things like that. And so, when we talk about rest and recovery, it's not just going to sleep, Phil. It's really when you rest and recover with your family, then you can go back out, you can repeat and be great. But being great for us is not just outside of the home, it's showing presence in the home that I'm here, I'm present, and I'm willing to engage so that I can win in my home game.
And can I even add to that?
I could tell she was like, I need to jump in.
No, I just feel like if you are winning at home, it will propel you to win out in the marketplace and all those other things. There has been some research that I've read, and I'm not going to mention it because I haven't thoroughly looked through it to speak on it. But that when the home life, when you don't have a good home life,
yeah.
it does affect your productivity and the quality in which you producing. And if you use sports analogy on the field or
Yeah.
in the workplace, right? So having a good home life is a part of you being productive and producing at your top level.
I love that. Now, something you mentioned, you both kind of mentioned there was, having that desire for success outside the home, right? And oftentimes, and I'm sure you guys see this in the NFL work you do, but even in, business sector like I'm in, people's identity can become tied to what it is that they do outside the home. And so all of a sudden their identity is highly tied to that, or a large portion of it is that. And you're telling me I should make the decision to make my spouse the higher priority. And but if I don't work and if I don't excel at my job, then we can't have this, right? And there's every excuse as to why to do that. But talk about maybe having your identity in your faith life, right? But then how that, like you guys mentioned earlier, ties back into the marriage as the number one goal, and how that can become a cycle in a positive way instead of finding all the reasons why it shouldn't be a, cycle in the negative way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, if your identity is wrapped into something that is not consistent, that's up and down, then you're living a life as a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
It's determined, it's blowing with the wind, it's up, it's down, it's based off your performance, which is not a realistic expectation because you're not gonna perform well all the time, 100% of the time, right? So that can leave you feeling not valuable. It can leave you feeling like you're failing, right? So your identity has to be based on something that's constant and consistent and stable. And that's where our faith comes in. It's who we are and who we were created to be, and then you springboard from there. And if you can have that foundation, that is going to help you be able to make those decisions, those hard decisions, and set those boundaries around your family and around your marriage, because that's a part of a divine calling
Yeah.
um, that leaves a spiritual legacy, right? And a lot of these other things that we make our identity rooted in are going to fade away, and they're going to, like the Bible says, go back to the dust. They don't have an eternal impact, but your how you are as a father and a mother and a spouse has
Mhm.
eternal impact.
Yeah, I think for me, I think we get our cues from the wrong places,
Mm.
right? And so is it building a career important? Sure it is. Is building a financial portfolio important? Sure it is, right? But I think God looks at how you love your family and how you're there for your family. I think that's just as important as those other things. And so I think what we do is when we take the miscues from the world, we go overboard with those and then we put God's priorities on a lower level. And so as a chaplain, as a dad, I just want to challenge all your listeners, right? Like if you put what's outside your away game over your home game, you're only going to win half the things that God wants you to win in, right? We never, as the Chargers, go and say we only want to win our away games. We don't care about the home games. No, it's in the home games. That's where your crowd is cheering you on, man. And it really just gives me a lot of wind in my sails to hear both of our kids talk about how much they look up to us or they honor us. Why? It's because if we spent so much time away, like let me tell you something, those ballerina or those performances when I showed up with the flowers, my daughter still remembers those things. She remembers that dad came to every track practice. And trust me, I won in my career. I am on the elite level, but I don't let my home game suffer. And so I just want to win at both. I want to win and conquer what's out there in the world, but I also don't want my family to be neglected. My dad is always gone or never present.
I love that. Now, the same question, but I think you guys might have different perspectives of this. And so, you talk about rest and recovery, and one thing that I've found in my life is the notion of balance, right? And that idea that every day is going to be balanced. And what I found for me personally is that that's just not realistic. It's like, no, there's just certain times or seasons or weeks where like there's a strong imbalance of my time, my energy, my focus. But that just means I know that I need to get, caught back up, right? I need to put extra effort in at a future date to make up for what I couldn't provide in this week, these two
Mhm.
days, whatever it is. And so, George, for you, you talk about supporting kids, being there for your wife, but I'm sure there's parts of your seasons and your work schedule where it's like I'm probably like 80-20, right? I mean, however it is. And then Tondra, for you, how do you make sure that when that is George's season, you're not building up bitterness? Oh yeah, well, you probably want to take a nap, but I haven't been able to take a nap in 5 days because I was taking care of the kids, right? So talk a bit about that, like rest and recovery idea within the confines of it's probably not going to be an everyday, structure. There's going to be times where it's going to be more and sometimes where it's going to be less.
Mhm.
Yeah, listen, man, I'll say for me, like, I what I try to do is and I'm not trying to say I get everything right, but I'm gonna give you some practical ways. Like when we're traveling, my wife, she often says during the football season, "Do you realize you're gone every weekend for half the year?" That's a lot on a marriage, right? But what I try to do is when I get to a hotel on the road, she's the first person, not one of the first person, but I call her and I tell her, "Hey, we're here at the hotel," and I'm asking her how was her day. I'm trying to be present, although I'm on the road. And so if there's things that I need to adjust or do on the road, then I'll do those things. But guess what? I don't just do those things. I go downstairs to the meal room and I'm asking my guys, have you called your spouse? Have you let her know we landed? And so I'm trying to help shape these guys to also, even though we're busy, although we're trying to conquer the world, you can still have in mind what's going on at home, and you can still lead and be a leader in your home, even when you're away, even when you're busy. It's just through moments of check in, or, hey, I just want to make sure you know I'm with you, although I'm not present with you. And our phones, it's just mobile today. We can do so much away from home. We can do almost more away from home than we can do at home. We just got to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah. And I would just add, as far as just from a wife's perspective, a wife really does appreciate those check-ins. And as long as you're staying connected and attuned with each other throughout that time, I think that helps, even though we can't like spend all the time we want to spend together, but just the effort of trying to stay connected even through busy seasons is really appreciated. And I do say that how you can guard your heart against that bitterness and resentment of things is when you guys are talking and communicating, you can share those things on your heart, and your husband, well, husbands, you got to be able to hear those things and not be defensive of those things. But just being able to open up and share frustrations doesn't mean that we're going to change the season that we're in or change the busyness. It just means like, hey, it's okay that you feel frustrated, and we understand, and it's not, and we can encourage each other that it's not going to always be this way. Or we're making plans that once we're out of the busy season, I'm being intentional to show you, hey, we're going to be spending this time. We're going to be connecting in those ways, because it's having that teamwork mentality is the key, right? It's is we win together, we lose together, and we help fill each other's gaps during that time, right? So when I'm being understanding of this busy season, I'm being a teammate to the season. We're in agreement that this is what we want to do as a couple, and I'm being a teammate to say, okay, I'm holding down the home. You can go and do those things out there, but this is how we're doing it together. It's not he's doing that and I'm doing this. Is no, here's our game plan. This
Yeah.
is our strategy in this season. I'm gonna do these things so we win. You're gonna do those things so we win. So it's kind of having that teamwork mentality when it comes to those tough, busy seasons.
It's like Batman and Robin.
Yeah, yeah. Superman and Wonder Woman. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Batman and Batman, like
Batman and
there's no
Batman.
one thing or listen, no. Now, when we look at, tangible takeaways, George, I know on our first recording when we were talking about things that, the Chargers organization is doing, or setting up date nights and, things of that nature. What are some tangible takeaways, things that people can be doing in their personal relationships to, just start to grow that together and maybe rebuild if the foundation is a little bit rocky or crumbly right now, rebuild it or build it stronger if things are going well. What are things that either you guys have done or you're encouraging, players that you work with to do to strengthen those relationships?
Yeah, so we call a few of those moments like a team huddle, right? Like a team huddle is just when you're gonna lock arms or lock eyes with each other and just ask each other those deeper questions, right? Sometimes life's so busy that we're not even asking the deeper questions because we're so tired. And so we on our website we've got a list of questions. We call it 25 questions every married couple should ask each other, right? In different seasons. And so if there are conversation starters that I think we just need to have the conversations, then I think there's moments that as men we need to lead the conversation. And hey, so let's do the date night. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go, and things of that nature. And so I feel like just really the proactivity of being willing to ask, but also step out and lead on some things of that nature. It could be like one of the things that I do for Tondra, for both of us, sorry, is Tondra loves right after the season to kind of go on a vacation, just me and her, where we're just down a week. And and I try to not to do that, the phones, or we try not to do any speaking engagements. We really try to lock arms and eyes with each other. And so I just think there's moments of intentionality that we have to build. We have to be creators of those intentional moments so that we can let our spouse know that not only are you prioritized, but you mean the world to me.
Mhm. Yes, and I would just add, I think the intentionality goes both ways as well, right? So is making sure that you are sharing what those needs are that you are missing, right? A lot of times I work with wives and they just say, "Oh, if he knew me or if he loved me, he
Mhm.
would just know, right? He should just know me." And that's not the case. Like you have to communicate your needs and your expectations. That is what how you give your spouse the opportunity to meet those needs. That's how you empower him to be there for you the way you need in whatever season. So communication is so key. That intentional communication is so key. Mind reading, uh, silent treatment, all those things are not effective in staying attuned and staying connected. You have to use your words, you have to share your needs. And I do think that's romantic. If you tell your husband, here's what I need, and he does try to meet that need. That, sometimes women feel like, oh, that's not romantic if I have to tell him. I'm like, no, that is really romantic that he cares enough to say, oh, this is what you need, and I'm going to make the sacrifice to meet that
Yeah,
need.
no, that's good, man. I just want to tell to all the wives, like you,
Yes.
if you think your husband knows, no, we don't. We don't know. We don't get it. Like you got to tell us, you got to give us a cheat sheet. You got to say, here's how I want you to respond to me, or here's what I need in this season. And so it's just, Phil, I think the theme of this part is communication,
Yeah.
communication.
Well, and something I share with our clients that we work with is, most frustrations come from unmet expectations, and most expectations are never clearly communicated, right? And so it's like we end up somewhere because there's a lack of understanding, right? And yeah, if we're not willing to share that, then it's gonna be really hard for us to uphold our end. But you already have that built-in expectation, so I love that you said that.
Yes.
Now, for you guys, once again, thinking back to the sports side of it, someone's relationship right now, they feel like the score is 40-3. Like they are down a lot. And, you wish there was that, 37-point play that you can just call it and, get the game even and tied, but you can't. And so, one area that, building back up or, making that comeback, if you will, is in the element of trust. And you guys talk a lot about, hey, that dynamic, how important it is. So talk about, trust in a relationship and, one, how to strengthen it, too, if it's been broken or diminished, how it can be built back up.
Yes. I say trust is such a gift. And if you have someone's trust, you have to work really hard
Hmm.
not to lose that trust. And trust is easy to lose, but it's hard to gain or regain. Now, with that being said, that's the proactive part. Okay. And whenever there has been a breach of trust, you have to understand that it takes time to rebuild trust. So it's about having those consistent, yeah, trust building behaviors is the way you kind of rebuild trust and giving it time. And rebuilding trust takes both individuals to rebuild trust. Sometimes the hurt partner thinks that responsibility is all on the person who hurt me. But if that person is doing everything, if you're going to rebuild trust and you're going to give them the opportunity to do that, meaning if they're doing the consistency and they're being patient and they're trying to earn your trust back, you have to acknowledge that and allow them to do that, affirm that, let them know you see and that you are feeling like, okay, that made me feel safe in that way. I had one wife who had been betrayed by her spouse, and she was like, I want him to never forget
Mm.
how much he hurt me.
Mm,
So I continue to remind him that he hurt me in this way so that he'll never do it again. And the thing about holding on to that hurt is that it keeps you imprisoned
yeah.
and it keeps you hurt and
Hmm.
it punishes you. So in order to punish him, you're punishing yourself. I don't know who gave this quote, but they said it's like drinking poison but expecting the other person to die,
Yeah.
right? No, you are also drinking that poison. So, regardless if you can repair the relationship or not, if it's going to have any chance at all, you have to be willing to forgive and move forward and not get stuck in the place of pain and give that partner the chance to rebuild that trust.
Hmm.
And then on the other side, if you're the person who hurt someone, you have to be consistent. You have to let your word be your word, and you have to make them feel safe. They felt vulnerable, that they got hurt, and it's going to take time to create a safety net for them, but you have to put the work in to do that.
Yeah, and Phil, I'll just I so think sports, right, and for me, I think you mentioned that word comeback, right, and we were
Yeah.
talking about comeback and building, rebuilding trust and things of that nature. Like we know some games that unless the team fought together and showed up together, there was no way they were going to come back, right? I think of Duke's my favorite basketball team, like in the college world, and I remember one year, it's probably like 15, 20 years ago now, but Duke was down probably like 20 to Maryland. I think it was Maryland. I think they called this game the 1 minute miracle. But with like 1 minute on the scoreboard, Duke came back and found a way to win. I remember when this was probably 15 years ago too. Anyway, I'm dating myself, but yeah, I think it was the Patriots versus the Falcons. I mean,
Yep.
everybody was up, happy, man. The Falcons are gonna beat the Patriots, and I kept telling them, man, that's Tom Brady. Don't underestimate him. And what they did was they found a way to come back. We all like great comebacks, but here's the deal: they had to show up,
Yep.
meaning I'm not going to walk out when I'm down. I'm not going to walk out when times get tough. The only way those great teams had a comeback is everybody on the team had to show up, be present, be willing to go through the hard times, be willing to dig. And that's what marriage is. It's not just about sports and what we see on TV. If you are in your marriage and you know you are down, you know trust is lacking in your relationship, I'm just going to challenge you: show up. Show up. Tell your spouse, I don't care how bad it is, I don't care what it looks like. I want this marriage. I'm going to show up. This is a vision that we want to have together, and we can rebuild. As long as we have two people, Tondra and I, as long as we have two willing people on our couch that's willing to roll up their sleeves and fight for their marriage, we can help you save your marriage.
Mhm.
Boom. I love it. Are there any last things you guys would like to share with the listeners, as either practical things to take away or words of encouragement, things of that nature?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I would like, the hope that for our the readers of our book,
Yeah.
that is we wrote this book to help take you on a journey. So it's not just a book that you're reading, but it's a book where you're actively working on your relationship to
Yeah.
get that game plan. So at the end of every chapter, there's questions, there's activities, there's skill building things to help you have a winning marriage, right? And so by the time you get to the end of this book, you would have been creating your marriage game plan all throughout. And then at the end in chapter 10, you will have put everything together in your marriage game plan for you to take away and revisit as needed, and just to keep you on the same page going in the same direction. You can adjust it through different seasons, but we want this to impact couples for the long game, right? And to give them tools and strategies to do that. And so our hope is that you get that out of our book. And my hope that I want to give couples that no matter where you are right now, if you're not in a good season, you don't have to let your past define you. You get to decide where you want to go moving forward. And George and I didn't start off good in our marriage, and here we are, stronger, better
Mm.
than ever. So I'm hoping, I just want to give encouragement and hope. Roll up your sleeves. The work that you put in, you will reap the benefits. It will bear fruit. So keep working.
Yeah, and then I'd like to say, listen, don't die in the sea of lifeguards, right? There's so much help out here for you to make it in your relationship or your marriage. So don't die in the sea of lifeguards. People die in those oceans constantly, or swimming pools, because they don't raise their hand. And so when you raise your hand, like for instance, if you get our book and then you give us a reach out on our website or whatever, we got some coaching groups that we're going to start doing. We're going to start doing a podcast. What we're saying is get a coach, get the right person to help you. The way elite athletes go to the next level is they have so many coaches in their life that's telling them, stop doing this, stop doing that. But in marriage, we want to keep doing what we want to do and see the same result happening. And so get the proper coach. And so wherever you are, we say, don't die in a sea of lifeguards. Get the help you need. Find a coach to make your marriage go from an average marriage to an elite marriage.
Mhm.
I love it. George, Tondra, I want to say thanks again for being on and sharing so many helpful tidbits. But go out and get the book, The Marriage Game Plan, and we'll look forward to hearing people's success stories from the book. Thanks, guys.
Oh
Thank
yeah.
you so much.